we go. So here we go. This is a section on thinking about what you need to consider if you're going to be putting some fruit into the ground. And Christy, when she's done, if you want to talk a little bit about the VEEP program, I know there's still some time for application. Are you comfortable doing that?
Yes, yeah, that's fine.
All right, good. Okay, so Danielle, take it over.
Hi, my name is Danielle and I'm with AA Vineyards in New York. I've probably met a handful of you guys when I've traveled to Ohio for the conference. So I've been here for, there's been quite a transition over the 9 years that I've been here, both as a nursery here and in the industry as a whole. So I don't know how many of you actually receive our newsletter, but I did just send one out recently, trying to just showcase some of the changes that we've experienced here over definitely the last year, but some of them were, a couple of years in the making. So some of the things I'll just kind of highlight here too, in case there's any questions that may come up about them. Obviously, there was a big transition in the industry looking for certified material. Here at AA, what we did was we reestablished a whole new certified block for propagation. So one of the highlights of our newsletter talked about filling out those rows. Obviously, when things first started, there was only so much material available, only so many varieties that had come through, and the ultimate goal is to have everything, right? So at this point, as of this year, we've got up to 35 now acres of certified material that we're propagating from, and that's a total of 164 different varieties in that block. So we're constantly building on that, expanding on specific varieties that we are consistently seeing us sell out for, obviously, and we've seen a change in it, or I guess a shift in some of the trend for our pre-orders, which is one reason why we thought today would be a nice time to step in and let people know further in advance that that's happening, because we have already started to sell out, especially of certified material, grafted material of specific hybrids of interest that I know are some of which are used in the Ohio region, depending on where you're at. So for us here, we've kind of, I know you guys are going to talk about some of your struggles with the labor aspect of things. Danielle and I spoke in the beginning of the meeting regarding any issues that we see and face here. I think we're probably in a very similar boat as you all are. We've adapted to a blend of having some more seasonal based workers, some that are consistently full-time, and then we've also utilized the H2A program to bring in help specifically tailored to aspects of the vineyard that we need consistent labor for. So we're working with that, and in conjunction with that have adapted to a lot of mechanization of certain things as well, not only for labor purposes, but to improve consistency of the material being put out there. So everything from planting to the development of the cuttings to the processing of the plants that have been dug from the fields, everything's kind of going through mechanized programs now, which is providing a more uniform product. So that's kind of where we're at in trying to consistently evolve and improve the product that we're putting out there. And I think from this standpoint, I want it to be most successful for you guys, for any questions you might have for me. The ultimate bottom line here is for us, where we have asked or encouraged growers to look at the fall before for putting in pre-orders. Realistically, at least a full year is more the timeline that we see our growers coming to us at this point. Just looking for specific plantings, more so on the larger scale, but it really doesn't matter. If you're looking to fill a block, you don't want to have to wait a year. If you've got some holes in there, other people are putting plants in, so you don't want to miss your opportunity either.
So you're talking about at least a full year's lead time and maybe more?
Yes. Yep. It depends on specifically what you're after. But I will say, at this point, we're just past that full year mark, and we have at least 5, potentially more varieties that are fully sold out for
So
2020.
what are the biggest sellers in the East for a place like Ohio?
So Ohio's, and you guys know this better than I, but it's divided because there's more 3 different growing zones for the most part for what people are looking to put in. So when we talk, and overall, it's going to be that certified that like people are scooping up the fastest. But in the middle region, I would say people that are looking at things like Chardonnay, things like Vidal, Chamberson, those are some of our big names that go quick. I don't know in Ohio how widely planted Norton is, but that's consistently an issue just because of its difficulty in terms of take. And then I know this year so far, like Oxawa, Valvin Muscat, these are all scooped up and accounted for already.
So what about varietal selection? How if I'm a new grower and I'm coming to you, what kind of advice, and I don't mean this to be a commercial for AA, but what kind of advice would a reputable nursery provide in terms of consultation for a new person?
Yeah, so it depends on a couple of things. One being whether or not you're a grower or you're a winery. There's a different position that we would take in suggesting to you what to do. For a grower, first and foremost, we tell them, we can tell you what will grow. We can tell you what a lot of people in the area are doing. But if there's an abundance of that there and you don't have a home for it, then there's no sense in putting that in. So we encourage any new grower to basically step out and talk to their wineries, talk to the people that they want or would have available to buy the grapes off of them, finding out what they want and need. Outside of that, obviously, comes then they circle back to us with their questions as growers, how easy something is to grow, the yield on it, what their property is like and how suitable it is to what is wanted by the wineries, because quite often a lot of the things that are needed are more difficult to grow. They are harder to come by. So then we dip into the next level of consultation. But really, from a grower standpoint, their success is ours. So trying to talk through all of those different situations that they're going to run into and trying to encourage them to make those connections ahead of time before we help them to determine varietals. Obviously, we have a lot of working relationships with different universities with new things that are being rolled out. But I would say consistently too, what we're seeing is areas that are being hit with weather that is not typical for their location. And so what those situations present will help us to also encourage, whether we really need to push them more in a hardier direction just because of the trends that we're seeing, or if we can encourage and teach them some of the tools needed to be successful riding the fence. So there's a lot that goes into those discussions.
Okay, so that's from the grower perspective. Can you talk about how you differently consult with a winery?
So the winery will bring in a different piece of the puzzle, whether they're looking for something that's, I know we have some locally here that really kind of want to be able to do those wine of the month things. So they don't need like a huge block of something, but they want some different things to maybe keep interest going, whether or not they want to put those in themselves or if they're sourcing them elsewhere. Usually there's always going to be some level of a workhorse involved, something that's going to be a consistent producer, that's going to require less maintenance, things, whether it's in the tasting area. So there are different pieces of that puzzle. They already know what they need or what they want to sell and put out there. It's just then how we make that work. So I guess for the winery, we maybe skip some of those hurdles in the beginning.
So I've got a chat here from Ken. What's the best time to pre-order? Having a difficult time getting some of the varieties. So are you recommending that people look 2 years out? And he said he's been working with you since 2003. Great service and support. just came to see you in May, picked up some vines. But what about the lead time for difficult to acquire?
Can you specify, Ken, in terms of difficult to acquire?
Yeah, we've been trying to get Chamborson for quite a while, and also Noré. We're trying to acquire that too, and we've not had success. In fact, last year we tried to get some filling in Niagara, and you guys were out. So
Yeah. So, yeah, Chamberson is one of our pressure points there. So I would say, and to speak to the Niagara piece too, what we saw, a lot of people thought that the response of us not having things when they were calling was in regards to something to do with the pandemic. I will say that we were very lucky in that we did not need to shut down. We were considered essential here, and we were able to maintain some of us at home, but for the most part, everything stayed in full swing. So with that being said too, the way that we plan is we would have everything finalized by December 1st of this year for everything that will be sold in 2023. So we're planning so far ahead that we weren't actually able to respond to the pandemic. We had already made everything with the assumption that that wasn't ever going to happen. So what actually has happened is there's been an influx in the industry itself. New wineries, new growers, large scale vineyards, as well as a huge increase in that homeowner market, people wanting to grow their own produce, taking on a new hobby. Everybody's at home, let's do something with it. So we've seen an increase in everything. This is actually, and it's industry wide as far as talking to other nurseries and even, mail order companies and stuff. Everybody is extremely high right now in terms of the amount of orders coming through and vines going out the door.
I have one other question. In a huge bulk order for Chamborson and Noré, is it possible to obtain 500 to 600 vines of one variety?
It is. Yeah, we have quite a lot. I mean, we have done, upwards of 5 to 10,000, of a
Okay.
variety, depending on what we're looking at, if we have it available. It's been building that certified material, but we're doing at that point pretty good. We have a whole, I don't know how many acres it consists of, but a whole nother new block of Chamberson for that reason too, to increase that production. But for Chamberson, because it's routinely sold out, I'm telling you right now, obviously it's sold out for next year, and we have a waiting list started for those. For you,
How do you get put on the waiting list?
call me.
Call you. Okay.
Any of us here, certainly, but give us a call, tell us what you're interested in, and we would put a mark down for you too, saying like, obviously as soon as it's available, but if you want a minimum at one given time, because we would call you, say if we had 100 available, but if you want that 500-600 only when the full amount is available, we might mark you down for that so that we're not bothering you in the meantime too. But trying to get you on that list so that year to year, we're kind of rolling basically and making sure that those customers that have inquired earlier on are the ones getting the vines ahead of a new order that's being placed later down the road.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Just to take a step back, in case there's anybody brand new, I don't see anybody brand new, but I am a little questioning. What is a certified block?
So when the industry shifted to, obviously with red blotch and leaf roll and all of these diseases that become, or I should say viruses that become more substantial as far as the damage that it can have on your overall success. Those things end up becoming such that they are treated ahead of time and cleaned out of plant material ahead of time. So when the industry rolled out the 2010 protocol, which I have a list on my website. If anyone is interested, I can send that link to you too, Donnie, to provide. But of all of the viruses that are basically screened out, and it does involve tissue culturing, it does involve all of these things that are done ahead of time. So what we did here, when I reference our certified block, and not every nursery does it the same, but what AA did is we sourced all new 2010 protocol certified material to start our mother block. And then it's from that we collect the propagation material to provide the nursery plant material that then we provide to the grower.
Okay. Can you talk a little bit about grafted versus ungrafted stock?
Yep. So obviously, well, and I shouldn't say that for anybody that's new, anything that's going to be European or hybrid that has heavy European heritage to it and parentage, those things need to be grafted. We obviously have some phylloxera, which is an insect in the soil that feeds on the roots. So over time, you see a decline in those vines. So from a standpoint of European or something that's hybrid, has heavy European background, those need to be grafted. Grafted meaning that it's put on an alternate root system or root stock. Outside of that, there are hybrids such as like Norway being one that is very, very, very vigorous. It's overly vegetative in the vineyard. So, and to create that balance of fruit to foliage to have a nice ripening effect, we will put it on a vigor limiting rootstock. So there are different hybrid situations that we will graft for other reasons other than the phylloxera, typically vigor related or site specific. Or something like a tomato ring spot virus in terms of a replant situation.
I know that California had to do a total replant because of phylloxera about 7 or 8 years ago. Can you talk about how you protect against that kind of thing by choosing rootstock that work and that you've tested? Do you have a rootstock block there?
Do we?
Yes.
We do have rootstock in our certified block, yes.
Okay.
So there are a handful of the rootstocks that we know to be resistant or tolerant of the phylloxera feeding. The phylloxera is not going anywhere. We know that. Obviously, we see it also in the foliar form, which we do see. I know in northern Ohio, there's a lot of the Minnesota varieties going in that have riparia in their background, and that tends to be a very tender bit that the aerial phylloxera goes towards. So we do use Movento from that standpoint where it's affecting the crop. Outside of that, all of the European and then hybrid, we're going to most specifically use 3309 and 10114. Eastern wise, we know those to be the biggest or most widely used, but we do have riparia in situations where it's needed, and we service the entire US. So in a lot of different areas too that need, they have a higher pH. We have 1103P that we utilize. Keeping in mind that obviously our decision making is happening, 1.5 to 2 years in advance of the vines going out. So we are making those decisions and grafting those ahead of orders. So what we've chosen, we usually try to run a pretty good split and base it off of the trends that we've seen in our orders and our growers coming to us and what they're asking for. But if it is something that we don't consistently have, but you need for your site, it's just that pre-order situation, more lead time, so that we know ahead of time we can graft it for you.
So you will do some custom grafting. Is there a minimum quantity that they do?
There is typically, depending on if it's something that Dennis feels he can put through like the greenhouse where he can keep a closer eye on a small batch. He usually makes those decisions just because once we get into small quantities of a bunch of different things in a large nursery field setting, we don't want to mix them up.
Right.
So, he just tries to be realistic about what's being asked of him that way.
Okay. And Dennis is one of the owners, one of the founders. Yes. Good guy. Questions from I sort of dominated things. I'm sorry. What's new? Sorry. Any questions from the rest of you about our comments, input? Joe, I see you joined us. You just put a whole ton of the ground. Anybody else? Okay, Christy, do you want to talk a little bit about the VEAP program? Maybe she had to go. Christy, you still there? Ooh. She's gone. Did she leave? I don't know a whole lot about it. Is anybody, I know there's a program that here we go. There's a program that the Ohio Department of Agriculture through the Ohio Grape Industries has launched. And it deals with some dollar matching. And I know they had 25 or 26 vineyards involved in this year, and they're renewing it. And I think the applications are due the end of July. Does anybody else know, Christy? I don't know where she went.
Did Christy go away?
She went away. Yeah, she went away.
I'll talk a little
So
bit more about it because I'm on the committee
go ahead.
that,
Go ahead, Eric. Yep.
that judges these things. So, so I was in the original well, not the original program, but the last version of it before this new round, and that was in 2011. And just to describe the process, it's the program, can reimburse you for the cost of your vines. There's a lot of requirements for it, and although I was not annoyed at the requirements at first, it was a good exercise. It forced me to do things that I wouldn't have ordinarily done just because I didn't have time, or I thought I didn't have time. But you have to create a business plan. You have to justify what you're doing. You have to get extension to come out and look at your site, and it's evaluated for whether vines are going to do well there or not. And that's a very important step. And if you skip that step, well, you can do everything perfectly and you'll still fail. If you have a good site, you can make a lot of mistakes and you can still succeed. So it's a very important process. There's a lot of requirements. You have to go through them. But when you're done, you have a big pile of information that you could use to do other things. I use mine to get my less than 10-acre plot into CAUV under something that nobody had ever tried before. So there's a third box now on the CAUV form that says, or provide proof that you're going to be producing a crop of more than $2,500. And that third box was never on the form before until and me and the Farm Bureau kind of pushed it through. But I used that stack of information to provide evidence that I'm going to be producing a crop this year that's going to produce cash. But otherwise, you'd have to have 3 years of sales.
Right.
To get it into
Exactly.
CAUV. So even though I was kind of annoyed at the process when I did it, I've used that stack of information over and over again.
So I think they've got $90,000 in it this year. Do you know what the reimbursement?
I don't know. I don't remember exactly, and or I have the information and I can't find it, and I don't want to say something that I can't take back.
Sure. I
I don't
will.
want to make a mistake.
I will.
I
I
don't want to be
will.
inaccurate in this.
I will follow up with the whole industry about the VEEP paperwork again, and I will do that sometime this afternoon. So if you are not on my regular winery or future winery mailing or grower list, drop me a little note and I'll send you the VEEP information because it is substantial. Wait a minute, somebody just popped in for a second. Hang on a minute. Who is back? Christy, is that you? Nope, not Christy yet. Okay. Joe, do you know anything about it?
Yeah, pretty much Eric covered it, but yeah, there's a matching, and again, I don't want to speak improper as well, but it's a 50% match, I believe. I think one of the better things. So I just planted a bunch of custom planted for Das Weinhaus last week, and a lot of those vines were purchased mostly from AA here, and actually I think all of them. And nice looking vines, by the way. And it's a 50% match, but I'll tell you, especially for newer growers, as much as the 50% match is beneficial, I truly think that all of the other stuff that Eric mentioned is probably equally as beneficial, where they force you to jump through all of these hoops that you have to have proper site selection, proper variety selection. You have to have Dr. Maria Smith or perhaps Andy Kirk come out to your vineyard, depending on where you are, and site you up properly for the right variety and so on. And I think it's a good information tool. If you're a little bit more advanced grower or an older grower, it could probably be more of a pain in the butt than what you get out of it. A little pile of money at the end of the day. But I think it's the preparation behind it that's equally as beneficial as the money itself.
We found when the VEEP program years ago, back in, I don't know, 15 years ago when it first was launched, that it created some successful vineyard owners who eventually morphed into winery owners. I will tell you a quick story. There were some very wealthy doctors from the Youngstown area about 20 years ago who decided they were going to be successful. And in Youngstown, they planted a whole bunch of Cab Sauv and they planted Sauvignon Blanc and a bunch of things that could have never worked. And they swore to me they were going to be successful. After they dumped about $750,000 into, frost protection and waters and crazy stuff, they abandoned the vineyards. They dumped that kind of money without appropriate research. So the V program will be a very, very important tool for people getting into this. I concur wholeheartedly with what both Joe and Eric have said. Any questions on that? Danielle, were you familiar with the program? You have to unmute.
I am not familiar with the program, no, but I definitely think that's the other piece of the puzzle in what you were kind of asking me before too, is we can provide as much as we know of the varieties themselves, but when it comes to a site, there are ways that you do need to make sure that you're setting yourself up for success there, and we can talk to somebody and walk them through, some of those steps, but having somebody on site kind of evaluating those things and walking them through some of those decisions and site development topics, I think that will be very successful.
Yeah,
overall.
Gary Gow, Andy Kirk, and Maria Smith are all very busy, but they are amazing resources. Amazing resources.
Well, we had Rick here that did some of that travel.
Right, Rick. Yeah, right. That's right. Yeah.
So, and I know that was always very helpful and appreciated by the customers. So
Good. Okay, so if people want to sign up for your newsletter, how do they do that?
you can do it right on the website, or certainly Daniela, you have my contact as well. Anybody, I'm the one that runs it, so I can add anybody directly myself if needed that way too. But there is a way to do it directly through our web.
Okay, I will forward it. It was very interesting and informative. So I will forward what I have that came to us. And then I write a newspaper column, okay? And your catalog is like my encyclopedia. When I'm doing a story on non-traditional varieties. So I know they are sometimes short supply, but it's all that information on the website too in terms of the varieties that you offer.
It is. So if you go on the individual variety pages, all of the disease information and everything that's listed in that grapevine chart in the catalog, that's a reference tool, that is listed under the variety on those individual pages as well. But certainly, I mean, we have them, anybody that needs them. We have some places that when they are doing a meeting of some kind, they might ask, hey, can you send me 25 of these or something so I can pass them out? We're happy to do that as well. Because we do know that they sit on shelves because people go back to them
all the time,
yep. Over and over.
Okay, any other questions or comments for Danielle? Okay, well, I'm going to stop recording and we're going to go into some industry discussion. Okay, so thank you very much. We'll send you a little note to say appreciation. Okay, last call for questions or comments. Okay, so recording.